Welcome back, everybody. I'm ZS Diamante, the author of the award-winning, wonderful, epic fantasy adventure series, Stone and Sky, and I am so thrilled that we get another chance to chat with my good friend and amazing narrator for the Stone and Sky series, Peter Leppard. He's on this side.
Welcome back. I'm so grateful.
This is so good. This is so exciting. Peter came up with this great idea where he was like, what if we had a chat like where we were talking about what it is to kind of do what you do as the author, and then we can talk about what I do as the narrator. And I was like, that's brilliant. Let's do it, because, this is my first time going through the audiobook process, whereas Peter's a total pro. And
Wow! I mean, yes.
Yes, he is. He's got a glorious voice. I mean, don't take anything away from him. But Peter, I love this idea. Do you want to start us off, or should I?
Either way. Okay. I've got some questions here for you. I know that you've got some questions there for me. So
this is great.
Play that game of question ping pong.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So one of the great things is I have a friend who is currently interested in starting to narrate books. He's been very interested in it for a while, but he's actually gotten kind of serious about it recently. And I was like, hey, that's perfect for my chat with Peter. If you got any questions, I'll bring them. So I actually have some questions from him. I'm going to throw one at you. His first question was, do you ever get tongue-tied while reading aloud?
All the time. So when you're there in your booth, or if you're starting out and you're in your closet, you're under your bed sheets, whatever it is, when you start out, one thing you've always got to remember is it's never going to happen on the first take, unless some sort of magic occurs. And I'll be honest, there have been the occasion where it does.
The occasional magic moment.
All the time. Yeah, you'll hit your moment. But
so that shouldn't be a discouragement if you do get tongue-tied every once in a while you're reading aloud. That shouldn't be a discouragement at all.
No, never let it discourage you. In fact, you'll sometimes find that it makes for both A, great outtakes, and B, real people get tongue-tied as well. So if you're in a conversation, if you're in a moment of dialogue between X number of characters, if they stutter, sure, maybe they stutter. Not everyone is confident.
Right. Sure. And you can kind of lean into that with a character whose kind of attitude or the way they hold themselves is maybe a stammering way, or they're not very confident, like you said. That's cool. I like that. I guess I'm going to tag one onto this one on the stammering one, because I've done it. I tested recording my own audiobooks, and I tested doing that, and that really wasn't going to work for me. I don't think I could do my own books. Maybe I could read somebody else's books, but definitely not my own books, because I know the way that they are supposed to sound in my head. And that's the way they are supposed to sound. And if I can't make that happen on the first 13 goes, I figure out a way to make it happen in a different way. And then it's just, I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours on the same lines, and it was not going to work. Do you end up getting stuck on lines where you feel like you can't get it? What do you do when you get stuck on a line?
Are you ready? 3 words. Take a break.
Yeah.
Just nice and easy. The great thing about recording is there's a pause button. And if you need to hit that pause button and step out of the booth for a bit, step out of your own head for a minute, scroll on the socials, take a look at what idiots are doing on YouTube, go outside, take a walk, take that break. Yeah.
No, that's great. That happens with writing too. I mean, sometimes you're going, I can't figure out what's supposed to happen in this next paragraph, or how do I start this chapter?
It's a real thing. Yep.
Yeah, you got to take a walk sometimes. I agree.
How do you get inspiration? Where is it that you go that fuels your creative energy?
Oftentimes, I read a lot. I read a ton. I love classic style fantasy, obviously. Hello.
Say it ain't so.
What? I couldn't believe it. I love that old school classic style epic fantasy adventure, right? So I read a ton of that. The wonderful thing about that is I didn't have glasses until I was like 22. So I hadn't read all that stuff before. So now I've just got droves and droves to get to read. And I'm still discovering wonderful books that people read 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and I'm like, no, this is wonderful. This is great. It's brand new for me. Another thing that I like to do, I actually like to take a lot of walks. I love to be in the quiet, which is something that a lot of people aren't really comfortable with, but I love the quiet. The quiet is so good for me. The quiet is a place for me I can really dive a little deeper and really kind of explore some of the hidden cavities within me, which is why I wrote a lot of really solid horror stories before I got into writing fantasy, because there's a lot of like tricky things in there and my brain will just take it to the extreme and we'll see where it goes from there, right?
When it's time to go dark, you go pitch black.
Yeah, right.
So going back to that then, I'll tack on to that then. What was your first book or first story even? Was it a book that you published, or was it a journal entry that you thought, hey, let's try something? Was it some lucid writing? How did that go?
My first story, when I was a kid, I didn't have glasses, so I couldn't read very well, and I thought it was dumb, and I hated books. It was horrible. It was sad. It was a really sad thing, but we laugh about it now, so we don't cry, right?
Right, no, exactly, yeah.
So at one point, a teacher put The Hobbit in my hand, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, fine. This is a pretty thick book for me at the time, because I was like, I couldn't read, right? I would read the same line over and over and over, and it drove me crazy. But man, The Hobbit, I was just invested. I read like crazy, devoured it. Even if I read the same line over and over until my eyes finally got to the next line, I powered through it. Maybe even 4 days later, I wrote my first story ever, my first book ever. It was called The Flobbit. Very original. Very
I love it. Keep going.
It was all about this monkey type creature that goes on an epic quest. And
brilliant.
Needless to say, I still didn't have glasses after that for a very long time, and writing wasn't really on the horizon for me until correct, until I went to Afghanistan and I came back, and I had gone through some things that I needed to work out and a different creative outlet, and so I started writing. And one of my first stories, and one of the first ones that I sold, it was called Playing in the Dirt. It's actually on my website, believe it or not. People can actually go and buy the PDF version of it. It was called Playing in the Dirt, and it's this horror, very classic style. Think H.P. Lovecraft, think Edgar Allan Poe, these classic style gothic horror stories. It was very much like that, and it was exploring this really creepy side that I'm very smiley. People see me all the time, and they like I smile all the time like this. I'm always talking to people with this brightness. I'm wearing this yellow sweater, very bright, and people would read this story and they're like, "Whoa, that's inside you, right?" Like, so that was one of the first ones that it was fiction, and I really went for it. And after that, it was like, actually, I might be able to do something with this, and kept going and writing a whole bunch of stories before eventually we started writing the Stone and Sky series. So what about like when you're sick? What do you do? Like, how do you record when you're sick?
Sometimes you need to not record. You need to take your health over it. You need to sit down for a minute. You need to lay down, maybe for a bit longer.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is I like to stay hydrated.
Mm-hmm.
I like to maybe do some hot honey and lemon.
Nice.
Make sure that you're nice and lubricated up in there, and be patient with yourself. It will take longer when you're congested. It'll take a bit longer to get your voice in the position that it needs to. But don't be afraid of that. And most of all, don't be afraid to put it down and have a day or two where you focus on your health.
Man, I like all of your stuff. I'm just going to take a break all the time. That's what I need to do. Maybe I need to take more breaks. These are great.
So then let's explore it from the case of having a deadline to work with. Communicate with who it is that you're working with.
Yeah.
Say you're working with an author and you've got a rapport with them. Say that you're working with a company who wants you to do some corporate training reads.
Sure.
Take a sample from either your previous work or from something that you've already recorded for them before you got sick. Take a sample of your very best whilst you are sick. Send them both and say, is this acceptable by your standards? How can I help?
Yeah.
Because it goes back to keeping that partnership alive.
Yeah.
Zach, we had an instance when I let you know, hey, dude, I don't have a voice right now.
You're right. Yeah. And we were both sick at the same time, too.
And we were both sick at the same time. Right.
I'm like trying to get a manuscript done and turned over for editing. And you're trying to do that. And we're both like, how are we both sick? This is terrible.
Right. When you come up to your microphone, sorry, I'm going to borrow Thor's hammer here really quick. And you're there going, hello, Robin. You know, and you just go, that doesn't sound, I don't have it. You know,
it doesn't sound right.
either you sound like you've been gargling marbles, or you somehow sound like Winnie the Pooh. Have a chat with whoever it is that you're partnered with.
That seems like good advice. That's just good professionalism too, though. You know, taking the time to go, hey, look, here's what's going on. I've got, I'm sick. As soon as I can get back on it, I'm going to get back on it, right? I knew I was sick. First person to get the edits. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little bit late. I got so sick and I could not write. My brain it wasn't working that way. So same kind of deal.
So we've talked about getting tongue-tied for myself. What about getting pen-tied for you? Writer's block. Everybody knows that phrase. How do you deal with it? How do you fight through it? Do you fight through it, or do you let it rumble around for a minute?
You really kind of need one of two things, right? Oftentimes you just need quiet, and I'll run off and I'll just go on a walk, and I'll just no music, no nothing, just walk. And I'll start processing things, and I'll start looking at things. I'll look at the wildflowers in the grass, and I'll see the trees waving in the breeze. And you'll start, the juice is flowing again, because all of a sudden you're experiencing something, and you're like, and you're taking a breath of fresh air, right? And you come back to it going, okay, here we go. Let's do this. Now, occasionally I'm on a deadline and I'm a little bit behind. Never happens.
What?
Never happens. Occasionally I'm like, okay, we got to power through this. So what am I going to do? Well, there's actually scientific studies that show that listening to orchestral music without words, will actually trigger things in your brain to start stimulating your nervous system. I've got this awesome playlist. I think it's called Orchestral Awesome playlist. I think that's what I did. And it's just got music from like Dragon Age and Lord of the Rings and Warcraft, and just like all these amazing scores from these amazing movies and from these amazing video games and from all these different wonderful things. And it's all just orchestra music. And sometimes I just turn that on and go for it. You kind of sit there and you listen, even close your eyes for a few minutes just to center yourself while you listen, and then start typing. It's pretty cool. Yeah. It's a pretty great way. It works for me. And I don't know if that could work for a narrator. We need it silent in here.
Yeah. So... yeah.
He's like, yeah, well, that wasn't helpful at all for us. Thanks.
Thanks. Man.
For the authors, that should be helpful. Do you read fast or slow? Now, that seems like a pretty ambiguous question, but I think you probably understand where he's going.
Yeah. And my honest answer is it depends on what I'm reading. Stone and Sky. You have moments in the book where you're taking a respite with the group, or you have a moment of thought with a particular character. You have a moment of counsel in the dialogue. You have a moment of lamentation, of mourning.
Yeah.
That you slow down for. But then you might go into another chapter, say even the next chapter, and oh my goodness, you're having to run away from a particular beast. You're about to slay a creature. You're in a fight that you definitely want to pick that up. The dynamics need to alter for that. You can go through 1, 2, maybe even 3 chapters, and your pace will change 20 to 25 times.
Sure.
Reading, narrating is very much like holding a conversation. Naturally, you're going to go faster in some areas, slower in others.
When you're talking to somebody and you're like, we're going to have a baby. Oh my gosh, we're doing it.
Exactly.
You get all excited, right? But then
think about those real life situations. Now, that being said, this doesn't apply just for narration, but also for other areas of voiceover work. You might be doing some corporate training videos. You might be doing telephony. There will be times when a pace needs to be set. Click start to begin. Press 1.
Is that for clarity's sake, so that people catch every single word so they don't miss instructions?
Yep. The short answer is, what are you narrating? What are you reading? What are you bringing voice to?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I think he's going to enjoy that.
I hope so. Or he's going to be sitting there going, this guy sucks. He didn't answer a thing.
He didn't answer any of my questions.
How do you find the balance between writing and living? Okay, that laughter, I think that's the answer right there.
Oh, got me. That is a great question. To be honest, I'm not sure I've quite figured that out. I'll just be frank and honest. When I'm in a rhythm and I'm doing well, and I'm doing well on both fronts, I usually have a pretty set goal each day. I wake up, I get the kids ready, we get them over to school, I come back and I write for a few hours before, working out and having lunch, and then switching over to business stuff. When it's time for kids to be home and everything else, then I can kind of switch over to that. And that's when I'm in a good rhythm, right? When I'm in a good, healthy balance there where, no, we're doing what we need to be doing for the writing stuff, but we're also doing what we need to be doing for the family stuff. Occasionally, the business side, it's quite the endeavor, right? There's so much that goes into authoring that people don't understand. A lot of people think, man, oh, you're an author, it must be the best job ever. And yeah, it is. I'm not going to lie to you. But they just figure you just sit home and, tap away on your keyboard all day and this amazing book happens, right? No, but they don't know that there's a whole process to it. They don't know that there's a whole business side of it too, where you have to go and figure out how to sell books, and you have to figure out how to engage new readers. You have to figure out how to engage an audiobook narrator. You have to figure out how to engage artists. There's so much work that goes into it that people don't really understand. And so sometimes the work side kind of takes over, and you miss a weekend because you're like, I gotta work through the weekend because we have this deadline, this thing's happening, we got a new release coming out, etc. Sometimes that happens. However, sometimes the family side takes over too. And you're like, you know what? Everybody's sick. Life is miserable. We're all like barely surviving. We're not writing. We're not doing business stuff this week. It's just not going to happen, right? Sometimes it's like, we got to go on a vacation. We're going to go to one of the national parks and we're going to go camping, so it'll balance out at the end. It'll all come out. But I find that the best times are when I'm really in a good rhythm and I got a good schedule going. That's the best time, I think.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Schedule yourself. Regiment. I'm not a regimented guy usually. It helps a lot.
Good answer.
How much acting is involved? Do you have to be an actor to be a narrator?
I would always recommend investing in some level, at least some level of acting training. Reason being is you learn a lot more about yourself. You learn a lot more about your diction. You learn a lot more about delivery when you go into these acting classes. I would even go as far as to say you learn a lot more about emotion, accessing the emotion, channeling the emotion into a scene. So it's not always necessary, but I would definitely recommend it.
On the author side of things, I've seen a lot of different narration styles. I've had people reach out to me and tell me, whatever narrator you get, you better be like Siri. Like, you better I use almost no inflection. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not how I want to listen to it. But I also know other people who that they prefer it to be less inflected, right? I've heard some books that are very even keeled, even toned, just really narrating the book. Whereas I've heard other side where people do voices. For me, it helps keep track of the characters, but some people hate that. I know where you are on the spectrum. Why don't you tell us where you are on that spectrum and how to lean into where you are on the spectrum?
So I'm very much on the side of bring voice to who you're speaking on behalf of. That's just me. That's been my style for a long time. Not just because I enjoy the acting side of it, but just for me, it makes it that much more engaging for me as a person, as a narrator. My thought is try them both, because I have tried just the monotone, the plain Jane. See how it fits for you. It didn't fit for me. It didn't work for me just because it didn't feel right. But see how it feels for yourself. You're not going to be the one size fits all ever.
Right.
And that's okay, you know?
Right. For me, I much prefer the books that have the voices. It helps me to engage, right? Which is why you're my guy for Stone Sky, because I was like, my guy's got voices. Let's go. This is where we're at. But you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. You're not going to fit one size fits all, right? However, do you think there's a viable amount of work out there for somebody who maybe doesn't do voices, but does more of the narration style? Like,
yes. Yep. The great thing about voice work, about narration, about any voiceover in general, is there are so many different things that you can go into. As I mentioned before, you could go into the more official non-fiction works. You could go into narrating historical documents. You could go into narrating, like I said, you could be the next person when someone, the next machine that someone calls into. That could be your voice. You could be the one announcing what station that someone's coming up to on a train. There's a bajillion different things that you can go into for any niche.
On the audiobook side, how do you go about finding gigs? I know how I found you, but how do you as a narrator find gigs?
Audible, audiobooks in general, they typically work through a company called ACX, and it's a website that is basically owned and run by Amazon and Audible. You can create a profile on there. You can upload a couple of samples on there, and then you click a little button that basically says, I'm ready to go. And there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of opportunities of authors such as yourself looking for someone, and you can filter by type, you can filter by genre, you can filter by length, and you can say, I want to give a go at this book, I want to give a go at this series. So combine that with getting to know other narrators, other voiceover artists, authors, any other creative in the space. You'll find that the creative space is not as dog eat dog as you may fear.
Agreed. Very much so. On the author side as well, yes. We kind of all love each other because we all love books. And that's kind of how it works.
We love to tell a story. And
totally.
if I can help you tell your story better, fantastic. If I have another voiceover companion who I think to myself, they're better at this style than I am, I would love to help them get work.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100% agree.
I'm sure that a lot of your fans have either brought this up to you already or have thought to themselves, how do I start putting pencil or pen to paper and start putting down what's in my heart? Because you know that everybody's got a story to tell.
Totally.
Well, how did you start, and how would you recommend others start off?
Those are two different answers, actually. That's okay. That's good. So how I started was, I wrote a lot of short form fiction. 1-2 jab, quick punch, horror, surprise twist at the end, those kinds of things. So for me, I had to kind of figure out how to write long form. I had to figure out how to write a book, something that would be, so many pages. If you know how to tell a story, you can kind of do it chapter by chapter to keep people going. When you add those 1-2 punch and the little twist at the end of each chapter, it makes them want to keep going through the rest of the book. So that was great. But how I started was I started just going on this adventure. I said, you know what? I love this idea of this world that has a bunch of flying creatures. I want the humans to have griffins, and I want the orcs to have wyverns, and I want the elves to have pegasi, and I'm going to create these like panther creatures with bats bat-like wings called Garvox, and that's what the dwarves are going to ride. And I had this cool idea about this crazy world, and I had to make a story out of it, make an adventure out of it. Only way I could figure out how to do that with all these flying creatures was, okay, if they're going to go on a journey, something's got to happen, and he's got to lose his griffin. We got to be griffinless for our guy to start this journey in order to get going. So I did that, and we just started going on this epic, amazing journey where we're gathering these friends as we go along. I started writing and just seeing what was going to happen. And I was like, okay, well, what's happening back home? Oh, okay, that's cool. Now we're following this character too. Oh, what's happening with the orcs? Oh, okay, now we're following this character too. And so now we've got a few lines of characters that we're following through the story that all end up having to converge at some point later in the story. That's how I started. About halfway through Stone and Sky, I was like, oh, how are we going to get everybody back? I know where they need to go, but how are we going to get them all there? And then I had to really start planning. With Stone and Tide, I totally took a different approach, a completely different approach, where I actually was like, okay, I know we're going to have 3 or 4 people, like groups that we're going to be following, and they're all going to have to converge. I learned from my mistake, and I said, okay, let's just find the spot in the book where they have to converge, and then let's kind of backtrack a little bit from there, and then also front track on the front end, and we'll figure out how that's all going to match up. So I did a little more plotting, right? Like, okay, in this chapter, we're following these characters. By the end of this chapter, they've got to be here. That doesn't mean I totally, cut myself down and now I can't have any creative juices. No, man, a sandbox is a sandbox because it has railings, and it makes a fun space that contains all of the sand that you can go in and have fun, right? If there's no railings, you're just in the desert, right? And who wants to be in the desert? So we're talking about creating boundaries to have a sandbox where we can just play and have fun. So there was at the end of this chapter, they should be here. Now, some of those things kind of get shimmied and shook, but for the most part, yeah, that's a guidepost for us on the way, and that helped a lot. So even if you think you're a pantser and somebody who's just going to go, woo, let's go, listen, hear me out. Plan a little more than you expect. And if you know where it's supposed to go, that really can help you backtrack and really organize yourself to make your story really brilliant.
Nice.
Do that. Don't do what I did. don't start and just go, woo, we're going on an adventure.
Let's rock, see the giants, let's fly.
Right. Wolverines, ride, let's go. Organize yourself a little bit. It'll help. It'll help. As an upstart narrator, what are some of the first things they should do when they're just getting started in narration?
A lot of people will say that you need to load up on equipment first. I'll be honest, my first few auditions were recorded on a phone. Yeah. So my first thought would be invest in yourself first. Invest in your ability first.
Yeah.
Don't just spend $2,500 on gear and then get in front of the mic and go, what am I doing with this?
Sure.
So invest in yourself. Try different things. See where your talent lies.
Yeah.
Get out of your comfort zone, but acknowledge that you will have certain areas that you're stronger at than others. So do that first. Invest in yourself. Secondly, invest in networking. Get on LinkedIn, get on any of the socials and find someone who's touts, I'm a voice artist. Chat with them. You will find that it's not dog eat dog, that 9 times out of 10, they will love to get you going. Connect with me. I'd be happy to chat with anyone. And then after that, see where you can take those friendships. Hey, do you guys have opportunities to practice with? Can I do a one-on-one call with you and just bounce some ideas and see where I'm at? Now, you're not going to get free tutelage through that, but you'll get a network of folks who are standing arm in arm and being able to say, hey, that was great. Try this.
So you're talking about a lot of testing, play around,
test,
and figure out where your strengths are and go from there.
And better yet, don't be afraid to fail a little bit.
Totally, yeah.
Like I said, the first few auditions on my phone. Most of those auditions came back saying, well, you're not who we're looking for. Sure. Thanks for trying. And that doesn't mean that you suck. that means that you're just not the right fit.
We've talked about how I sent samples out to numerous
Yes.
narrators and big time narrators, but none of those guys were the right fit. You were the right fit. And that's
Right.
how we ended up working together. That kind of brings me to an interesting question. As a startup narrator who's maybe they've tested some things out, they've read some things, they've recorded some things, they're starting to feel a little more comfortable, and they're like, okay, I think I'm ready to give it a go. I think I'm ready to get myself on ACX and start, doing some samples for people and doing some auditions for people. What's your recommendation as far as going in and setting up how much you want people to pay you, or what kind of contracts you're looking for?
You can find guidelines on things on sites such as ACX. If you go through, let's see, there's Backstage. That's another audition site. There are a bazillion of them out there.
There are a few.
there are a good number out there. You can find some guidelines of, hey, if you're new to it, maybe try this or that. Another idea: have a look at websites such as Fiverr. If you want to just kind of build yourself up and just say, okay, well, I'll do this for you for $5 or 10 or 20 or however many.
Get a few
but
credits
also
under your belt.
Exactly. Get some credits under your belt, but also ask some of those friends that you've made. Just say, hey, when you started out, how was it for yourself? And preface it with, hey, I want to talk how you started your business so that I can get help starting up mine. You don't want to blindside someone by just going, and how much are you making?
Yeah. Money.
Right.
Let's talk money.
Right. If you're in it for the money, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons. I do what I do, and I get the feeling, Mr. Diamanti, that you're in the same boat. I do what I do because I love it. Let's be honest, we're in the creative world. A lot of times it isn't as money-making as people say it is. I myself, I have a 9 to 5. It's more like an 8 to 6, but I have a 9 to 5.
Right, yeah.
This is what I do because I love it. So embrace it.
So really love it before you get yourself into that spot. Into where, okay, now I got to start making money. Totally agree. I remember writing Stone and Sky, and it was done and sitting for 9 months. It was just done and waiting before I even released it and started selling it. I mean, we were talking about 9 months of not making any money on doing all of the business behind the scenes stuff as an author that you have to do, but also not making any money on it. So if you're not doing it because you love it at first, you're not going to have staying qualities, I think.
That burnout's going to find you quick.
That's right. I think I ran through the whole list on mine.
I think that's it for myself too, mate. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I am so glad that we got to do this. This is so cool. If you are an upstart author or you're an upstart narrator and you got some value out of this, please let us know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys think, or maybe if you have questions, let us know. You can connect with both of us. We're both on social media now. We'll make sure to link those in the description as well. But in case they missed that, do you want to tell everybody where they can find you so they can connect up with you?
Yep. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Peter Leppard. You can find me there. You can track me down through my website, truebritaudio.com. You can find me on Twitter. I am on Twitter. My handle is @IamTrueBritVO without the blah, blah, blah. Just @IamTrueBritVO. You can also reach out to me through Instagram, which is Peter Leppard TBA.
And you guys can find me. All of my socials are all the same, @ZSDiamante, spelled like it is right there, with no periods, just ZS Diamante. And if you're wanting to check out some of my work, you can actually check out the free Preludes collection. I send them out, and there's 7 of them that you can get for free, all about characters that you meet in Stone and Sky, and you'll get to hear their voices here very, very, very soon. So
check it out. Read it. It's awesome.
Make sure you check it out. You can actually find that at freefantasyfiction.com, and that's actually attached to my website too, so you'll be able to find all my stuff there. So freefantasyfiction.com, check that out. And until next time, Peter, thanks. This is awesome.
My thanks to you too, boss.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Peace out.